My boyfriend used my penthouse flat and car to flirt with other girls. And he ended up hitting on my roommate. So on my roommate's birthday, she took us to see what she claimed was her family's 3,000 square foot penthouse flat in the city center. Blimey! I was shocked to find myself touring my own home. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. My roommate recently started dating a second-generation rich guy. She used to carry knockoff bags, but suddenly received a genuine Chanel quilted handbag. Apparently, it was a gift from her boyfriend. Besides that, our room was filled with various snacks and gifts from her wealthy boyfriend. Megan kept showing them off to us one by one. "Eleanor, guess how much this bag costs?" she asked. I glanced at it. It was a last season Chanel, and it didn't even look new. £10,000 at most. But for Megan, who didn't come from a well-off family, it was already considered a luxury item. We had just moved into our new dormitory not long ago and would be living together for 4 years. I didn't want to strain our relationship, so I put on a smile and said, "Isn't that a Chanel? It must cost tens of thousands pounds, right?" Megan's face revealed a contemptuous smile as she glanced at the Gucci bag beside me. "How does it compare to yours?" I felt a bit speechless. Megan's family wasn't well off. I heard her mom was a gambler, her dad was bedridden, and the whole family relied on her elder sister. But often, the poorer the family, the more vain they are. She didn't even apply for a student grant, just because she was afraid we'd think her family was poor. Since my family was quite well off, I occasionally brought some designer items my mom bought for me. From the moment we became roommates, she seemed to dislike me and was always trying to compete with me, either openly or subtly. At first, she just bought some knockoffs to show off and created a fake rich girl persona online. But ever since she started dating this wealthy boyfriend, she'd been flaunting things in front of me every day, always trying to one-up me in conversation. I found it a bit ridiculous, but I could understand her vanity. So I decided to go along with it and said, "It's much more expensive than mine. This thing of mine isn't worth much, it's just a high-quality replica." As expected, Megan's face immediately relaxed upon hearing my words. She looked as if she was on cloud 9, like she had a bit too much to drink. "I'm just saying, one should pay attention to the quality of life," she said. I nodded and agreed perfunctorily, "Yes, you're absolutely right." The other roommates also chimed in. "Wow, Meg, that's an expensive bag. Your boyfriend really spoils you." Especially Yvonne, who wasn't from a well-off family either. She looked at the second-hand bag as if it was a treasure and said flatteringly, "Meg, your boyfriend is so rich and treats you so well. This bag, can I borrow it for a bit?" Megan waved her hand. "Be careful, don't damage it." I laughed inwardly. A worn-out second-hand Chanel that even my family's housekeeper wouldn't bother carrying had become a prized possession to Megan. But it didn't bother me. I couldn't be bothered to provoke others. That evening, my boyfriend Jackson Brown arrived downstairs. "I've brought you your favorite crayfish from that place you love. Come down and get it," he called. My face lit up with delight as I quickly put on some clothes and hurried downstairs. Sure enough, Jackson was waiting there, holding up the bag as he saw me approach. I bounced over to take it, and it was indeed from my favorite crayfish place. They don't do deliveries, so it's always a 90-minute drive to the east side of town to get it, quite inconvenient. Noticing Jackson's slightly sweaty forehead, I felt touched. I reached out to wipe his brow. "Did you go specially to buy this? Are you tired?" Jackson didn't say anything, but a small smile played on his handsome face. "It's no trouble." "Do you like it?" he asked. "Oh, by the way." He trailed off, seeming hesitant. I was too excited to think much of it and looked up at him. "What is it?" "That Aston Martin your friend has, could I possibly borrow it for a bit?" Jackson scratched his head awkwardly. "My department is having a gathering in a few days. You know, lots of rich kids there. I'm worried they'll look down on me." I frowned slightly. Jackson was great in every way and treated me well, but he was just like Megan in this regard. Perhaps because of his modest background, he was particularly obsessed with keeping up appearances. Ever since he'd seen me driving an Aston Martin that one time, he'd been constantly hinting about it. My dad had never much liked Jackson and forbade me from telling him about our family's circumstances. So I'd just made up a story about borrowing the car from a friend for a while. As for the house, I said it belonged to a friend too. Jackson hadn't questioned it, since I always dressed simply and rarely used luxury items. But I hadn't expected him to still be fixated on it now. I wanted to refuse. But then I thought about how Jackson had just driven halfway across town specially to buy me crayfish. And I couldn't bring myself to say no. I hesitated, not because I cared about the car, but because I didn't much like men being so obsessed with appearances. My dad has over 100 chain stores across the country, and our family fortune is in the tens or hundreds of millions of pounds. But I rarely use luxury goods in my daily life. I believe a person's status comes from what they earn themselves, not from showing off. But seeing Jackson's pleading eyes, my heart softened. He's a very ambitious person. As soon as he started university, he did everything he could to get into the secretarial department of the student union. There are indeed quite a few rich kids there, so it's understandable he'd think this way. After some thought, I agreed. I took the car keys out of my bag and handed them to him. Here you go. Jackson's eyes lit up instantly. He took the keys reverently with both hands, as if receiving some priceless treasure. He was so excited he barely spoke to me. Just planted a big kiss on my cheek before turning to leave. I held him back. You're leaving already? You only just got here. Jackson could barely contain his impatience. I want to try out the car. I don't want to make a fool of myself tomorrow. I suppose that made sense, so I took my crayfish and went back upstairs. There was too much crayfish for me to finish alone, so I invited my roommates to join me. The other two girls happily got out of bed, but Megan just glanced disdainfully at the crayfish on the table. Eleanor, is this all your boyfriend brings you? She turned away with a smirk. How stingy. I'm telling you, you can't keep a man who's so tight-fisted. My boyfriend is taking me to a Michelin-starred restaurant tonight. To be honest, no one really cared what she was eating or where she was going. And frankly, I don't think the food at those Michelin restaurants tastes as good as crayfish. After trying all sorts of fancy places, I realized I just love crayfish, whelks, and street barbecue. I forced a smile. Wow, impressive. Then I put on some gloves and started peeling the crayfish. Maybe Megan felt my reaction didn't satisfy her, because she glared at me, pulled out a cheap knockoff Hermes bag from her closet, and stomped out in her high heels. As she left, she tossed back a final barb, pearls before swine. I wondered to myself, what business is it of hers whether I'm refined or not? Why is she so angry? Megan didn't come back that night. When I was getting ready for bed, I casually scrolled through Twitter and came across Megan's latest post. Few people know Megan's true family background. I only found out about her situation a couple days ago, when I saw her sister while we were moving dorms. To the outside world, Megan always cultivates the image of a rich princess. She goes out splitting Uber rides and mooching off others' memberships, buying fake designer goods. Those bags look impressive at first glance, but anyone truly familiar with luxury items can spot the fakes instantly. But there aren't many people who can tell the difference, and no one can examine them up close anyway. So Megan's rich princess persona is quite convincing. Even our roommate Yvonne believes she's genuinely wealthy. Megan also has a Twitter account where she posts daily updates that sync to her Instagram. Today's update read, back at Le Manoir aux Croissants again. The purple sea urchin was quite good today, flown in fresh this morning. The lobster was just so, nothing special. Another day of whining and dining. The photo showed her leaning against a car, deliberately angled to show off her fake Hermes bag. The Balenciaga stockings on her legs were £1 knockoffs from Wish.com with the letters printed crooked. But what caught my attention wasn't her array of fakes, it was the car behind her. The black Aston Martin looked suspiciously like mine. Only the license plate was obscured by her leg, so I couldn't be sure. Surely not, I tried to reassure myself. What are the odds? There are plenty of people driving Aston Martins. Sometimes you can spot several in one level of the car park at Canary Wharf. Besides, maybe Megan was just posing with someone else's car again. I decided it was too far-fetched and turned off my phone to sleep. Though it was strange that Jackson hadn't replied to my messages all evening. He said his department was having a meeting and he was busy. Maybe that was true. The next morning, Megan returned with a radiant smile on her face. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, as she enthusiastically described every dish from the previous night. The sea urchin was incredibly fresh and sweet. Sea urchin from Japan is truly something else. You must try it if you get the chance. She then glanced at me pointedly, unable to hide her sense of superiority. Though some people might only ever get to taste crayfish in their lives. I felt unfairly targeted. What's wrong with crayfish? They're delicious. I don't even like that fancy Japan sea urchin. It's all slimy and cold, like raw egg. How can that compare to the hot, spicy goodness of crayfish? Before I could speak up, Megan continued. It's my birthday today, and my boyfriend is throwing me a party at his place. Why don't you all come? He lives in a penthouse in Kensington, you know. It's over 3,000 square feet and has a stunning view of the city skyline. The flats there start at £15,000 per square foot. His place must be worth millions. As she spoke, she became more animated, her eyes brimming with admiration and wonder. I didn't feel particularly impressed. I just thought it was quite a coincidence. My family also owns a flat in Kensington. My dad bought it in case I found living in dormitory uncomfortable. But I ended up staying in halls because I was too lazy to wake up early for classes. I only go back there occasionally. I hadn't expected Megan's boyfriend to have so much in common with me. We drive the same make and model of car, and even bought flats in the same building with the same layout. I didn't think much of it. Megan insisted we all come to the party, and I didn't want to be rude. So I joined a few classmates in taking a taxi to Kensington. Megan led the way, her eyes sparkling. My boyfriend bought the penthouse flat. At night, you can see the entire city center. It's £10,000 more per square foot than the other flats. The classmates behind me exclaimed in admiration. Your boyfriend is seriously loaded. I know this area, it's the most expensive in our city. An ordinary person couldn't afford even a toilet here after working their whole life. Yvonne also chimed in enviously. Megan, you're so lucky. You're already amazing yourself, and you found such an outstanding partner. By the way, does your boyfriend have any friends? Maybe you could introduce us? Megan chuckled lightly. Their social circle is quite exclusive. Maybe someday. Oh, here we are. She swiped her card and led us into the building. But as we walked, I started to feel increasingly uneasy. This was far too coincidental. The two penthouses flat even had the same flat number. It wasn't until Megan entered the lift and pressed the button that I froze in realization. There's only one flat per floor in the penthouse. 17th floor. This is my flat? I was too shocked to speak, staring dumbfounded at Megan. As she entered my flat using the passcode. The passcode was still my birthday. For a moment, I couldn't even process what was happening. I could only watch in stunned silence as Megan smugly gestured towards my enormous living room, saying, "What do you think? This is the best location in our city." I followed her gaze to where birthday balloons and fairy lights had been carefully arranged, along with a massive swan-shaped velvet cake. On top was a card that read, "Happy birthday, darling." My classmates erupted in amazement. Bloody hell, this living room is bigger than our entire house. Yvonne admiringly stroked the genuine Italian leather armchair my father had imported. This must have cost a fortune. How lovely. You were born at the finish line, weren't you? Good looks, good family, and a good boyfriend too. Megan was basking in the praise, a smile never leaving her face. She lifted her chin slightly and pointed to the sofa. Why don't you all have a seat? I'll make some coffee. She headed towards the coffee machine, but after fiddling with it for a while, she couldn't figure it out. Megan looked a bit embarrassed, muttering, "What's wrong with this thing? I saw him do it just like this last time." I walked over expressionlessly and pressed a button on the back. The coffee beans began to roast and grind, filling the air with a rich aroma. Megan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her face flushing. I've forgotten how to use it. It's been so long. Why don't you sit down? My boyfriend will be back soon. I didn't move. Instead, I asked, does your boyfriend drive a black Aston Martin? Aston what? Megan stammered, then quickly recovered. Oh yes, Aston Martin. Black. I've posted about it before, remember? I nodded and turned to sit on the sofa. The other classmates were still marveling at my flat's decor. I looked out the window, inwardly scoffing. Well. It was all clear now. So my boyfriend had been using my flat, my car, and my money to pick up girls. And he'd even managed to snag my roommate. No wonder I couldn't find my key fob. Jackson must have nicked it. He'd memorized my passcode too. And now he was out there playing the big shot with my car. I doubted Jackson actually fancied Megan. He'd probably seen her Twitter or Facebook and thought he could land himself a rich girl. I'd only just moved into the dormitory and hadn't mentioned my roommates to him. He had no idea Megan and I lived together. I suppose it made sense. A real rich girl with her Hermes bag. Or an ordinary girl like me whose car and flat belonged to a friend, of course he'd choose her. These two really deserved each other. One stealing someone else's things to show off. The other constantly posting afternoon tea photos pretending to be posh. A match made in heaven, truly. But using my things to impress girls? That was going too far. I didn't expose Megan on the spot. I was waiting for Jackson to return. I really couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he saw me. I didn't have to wait long. Jackson seemed genuinely eager to win over Megan, the rich beauty, and returned quickly. When the lift stopped at the door, Megan excitedly ran over to open it. A massive bouquet of flowers greeted her. 999 roses packaged into one enormous bunch, completely obscuring the person behind it. I silently gritted my teeth. No wonder. Just a few days ago, Jackson had told me he was short on living expenses. And asked me to help him out. I truly believed he had no money for food and immediately transferred him £5,000. Turns out he was fleecing me to buy flowers for someone else. In all these years with Jackson, he had only given me flowers once. And that was a single stem the restaurant gave away during a promotion when we went out for dinner. I had always been understanding of his family's poor financial situation. But it seems he wasn't really stingy, he just didn't think spending money on me was worthwhile. Megan had certainly gained face in front of her classmates. Her face was beaming with joy as she took the roses in both hands. And led Jackson into the living room. Her voice couldn't hide her pride. Let me introduce everyone. This is my boyfriend Jackson. His family runs a chain of 5-star hotels, so if any of you ever need anything. She didn't finish her sentence as I stood up and started clapping. Well. What a perfect match of a handsome rich boy and a beautiful rich girl. Megan, why don't you tell us what we should call your boyfriend? The moment Jackson saw me, the spring-like expression on his face instantly turned pale. He abruptly let go of Megan's hand as if he'd been electrocuted, freezing in place. Megan hadn't caught on yet and was pleased to see me being so supportive. She smiled and said, just call him Jackson. Jackson is the secretary of our student union. So if you need anything in the future, just ask him, right Jackson? Jackson's forehead was beaded with cold sweat. He looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost, his lips quivering. Megan pushed him slightly, dissatisfied. Say something. Ah. Jackson snapped back to reality, flustered, and nodded, yes. He didn't dare look at me again, his eyes darting around. I noticed he was still holding my car keys, probably having just driven my car back. I gripped the back of the sofa, my eyes narrowing. He was treating me like a fool, eating my food, drinking my drinks, using my things. And still trying to climb the social ladder outside. I couldn't stand it anymore. With a sarcastic smile, I turned to Jackson and said, So, Jackson, this is a nice flat. When did you buy it? Jackson wiped away his cold sweat, his voice trembling, not daring to look at me. However, with all his classmates around and Megan by his side, if he admitted this wasn't his flat, he'd be utterly humiliated. He had no choice but to lower his head and say through gritted teeth, not long ago, 2016 maybe, or was it 2017? I laughed. This flat only started selling in 2019. You must have bought it quite early. Did you time travel to purchase it? Jackson's face instantly turned red. I must have remembered wrong. I nodded. So how much is the service charge per square foot here? Jackson looked at me pleadingly, unable to utter a word. By now, all the classmates had noticed something was off. They sat on the sofa whispering, looking at Jackson suspiciously. Megan was also stunned for a moment, then glared at me angrily. Eleanor, what are you implying? You're being so petty. Jackson's family has so many properties, how could he possibly remember all the details? Oh, so Jackson didn't tell you that this flat isn't his, but mine? As soon as I said this, everyone was dumbfounded. The spacious living room fell silent as everyone stared at me, seemingly unable to comprehend what I had just said. Jackson's body swayed slightly as he lowered his head and clenched his fists. I stood up, a cold smirk playing on my lips. I apologize for the embarrassment, but this flat was bought by my parents for my studies. Unfortunately, my judgment was rather poor, and I ended up dating a cad who used my flat and car to impress other women. It's understandable that you don't know the service charge for this property, considering you only stole my card and PIN. Allow me to enlighten you. This flat was purchased in 2021 for £130,000 per square meter, with a 27% shared ownership. The service charge is £12 per square meter monthly, totaling 312 square meters. It also comes with 2 parking spaces, each worth £500,000. The total cost, including renovations, was £45 million. I walked up to Jackson, noting his ashen face with a slight sneer. Do you understand now, you uncouth oaf? Megan was dumbfounded. After a moment, she mumbled, that's impossible. It can't be. She pushed Jackson forcefully. Jack, say something. Eleanor's talking rubbish, isn't she? Jackson stumbled from her push, unable to utter a word as he kept his head down. Suddenly, everyone understood the situation. Their expressions were a mixture of shock and awkwardness as they sat on the sofa, staring at Jackson. Megan still refused to believe it. She glared at me, her teeth clenched in anger. Eleanor, stop making things up. You're not welcome here. Please leave. Asking me to leave my own home? I raised an eyebrow and glanced at Jackson, who looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. The code is 221003, isn't it? Megan froze, her face instantly turning sour. You must have seen me enter it earlier. I shook my head with a laugh. Don't be daft. It's my birthday number. Not only is this flat not Jackson's, but the car isn't his either. If you want to date someone rich, you'd be better off with me directly. Megan looked at Jackson beside her in disbelief, grabbing her bag and hitting him with it. You liar. Say something. Your car and flat are all fake. You shameless bastard. Jackson remained silent, allowing her to hit him. He lifted his head and shot me a look, unable to hide the venom in his eyes. Our classmates didn't say a word, but their eyes were fixed on him, barely concealing their mockery. Someone chuckled softly, though it was clear they found the situation contemptible. For someone like Jackson, who valued his image above all else, being exposed publicly was worse than being skinned alive. I spread my hands, smiling nonchalantly. Well, since we're all classmates, you're welcome to stay and look around for a bit longer. Shall I order some crayfish for dinner? Who's in? Jackson clenched his fists and left without a word. Megan glared at me one last time, looking as if she wanted to bite me. Eleanor! She hissed through gritted teeth. You'll regret this. With that, she stomped off in her high heels towards the lift. The living room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. No one had expected things to unfold like this, and they were unsure how to react. Only one of the lads, oblivious to the tension, piped up. Eleanor, I had no idea your family was so loaded. I'll have a large portion of that crayfish, then. His comment seemed to break the ice, and the others chimed in. Yes, yes. Large portions, and the most expensive ones. I smiled and took out my phone. All right, then. As I was returning to my dormitory that evening, Jackson was already waiting for me at the entrance. When he saw me approaching, he grabbed my wrist forcefully, causing me pain. I turned to look at him, noticing his reddened eyes as he gritted his teeth and said, Eleanor, did you really have to humiliate me like that today? Do you have any idea what they'll say about me now? We've been together for a while, how could you be so cruel? I was utterly amused by his audacity. I pretended to clean my ear and exclaimed in mock surprise. Good heavens, did I hear that right? Are you suggesting that after using my flat and car to flirt with other girls, I should still save face for you? What's this? I mocked him. Are you made of diamonds or something? Are you really that precious? Jackson's face turned from red to white. Though he knew he was in the wrong, he still spat out bitterly. You could have at least maintained some decorum in front of others. Couldn't we have discussed this in private? Yes, I was momentarily led astray, but I still care for you. That Megan, she was the one who seduced me. Yes, she's always been trying to seduce me, and I couldn't resist. Jackson wiped his face and explained. I truly didn't mean anything by it. Ellie, can't you forgive me just this once? He reached out to hold my hand, but I was so disgusted that my temple throbbed. I violently shook him off. The events of today were so absurd that they felt almost surreal. Truly, art imitates life, and reality can be more dramatic than any TV series. I never imagined Jackson would have the audacity to ask for my forgiveness. I suppose he hadn't finished using me as his personal ATM yet. I stared at Jackson and said, enunciating each word. Stop disgusting me. We're done. Give me back my car keys. Jackson tried to say something more, but I was too repulsed to look at him for another second. I reached into his pocket, retrieved my car keys, and walked away without another word. After breaking up with Jackson, I wasn't as upset as I had imagined I would be. Perhaps it was because his true colors were so shockingly revealed that I sometimes even felt that separating from him was a good thing for me. But what I didn't expect was that Jackson and Megan didn't break up. I don't know how Jackson managed to win Megan over, but they actually started dating openly. For me, this didn't matter much. After our breakup, whoever he was with was none of my business. However, even though I had turned the page, those two seemed to harbor a grudge against me. A few days after the breakup, one morning after I woke up, I suddenly found my phone filled with messages and missed calls. I was surprised and picked up my phone to see that many classmates had sent me messages. Yvonne also rushed to my bedside, whispering, Eleanor, is what Jackson posted in the group chat true? I don't think you're that kind of person. Hearing her mention Jackson's name, my heart sank. It must be Jackson stirring up trouble again. Sure enough, when I opened the class group chat, there were already 99 plus messages. I quickly scrolled to the top and discovered that last night, while I was asleep, Jackson had posted a long message in the group. This lengthy message detailed all the expenses he had incurred while we were together, including the lipstick he bought me for my birthday, the movies we watched together, and the meals we had. He portrayed himself as a victim, saying I was a gold digger who had dumped him now that I had found a better prospect. Eleanor Wilson from Finance 2 class always spent my money when we were together, demanding gifts for every holiday. I put up with all that. But recently, after she started dating a rich guy, she dumped me and has been bad-mouthing me everywhere. I can't tolerate this anymore. I hope our classmates will see clearly and recognize this gold digger's true face. I was absolutely stunned. Opening the images he posted, they were all long essays he had written himself, portraying himself as a devoted victim who had willingly given everything for me during our years together. And that after I started dating a wealthy man. I had kicked him to the curb, and not only that, but I was also spreading rumors about him. As I read through his fabricated stories, it was nothing short of a complete distortion of the truth. The reason he was spreading these lies was simply because he was afraid I would expose his facade of pretending to be wealthy. So he decided to discredit me first. This way, no one would believe anything I said anymore. To be honest, I hadn't expected Jackson to be so vicious. For a girl, these accusations were like a knife to the heart. By smearing me like this, saying I was a gold digger who dumped him after finding a rich guy. Even though it wasn't true, many people would actually believe it. This kind of so-called scandalous news is exactly what the public loves most. Everyone would think there's no smoke without fire, it takes two to tango. If I couldn't produce strong evidence to counter this, my reputation for the 4 years of university would be ruined. However, I guess these two were in such a hurry that they hadn't thought things through clearly and had hastily posted the message. I gritted my teeth and opened the group chat. As expected, the class group had exploded, with many classmates discussing the matter. A girl who had always been a bit at odds with me seized the opportunity to kick me while I was down. I know Eleanor, that flirty girl from Finance 2 class. I always thought she seemed a bit dodgy. Probably thinking about how to hook up with rich guys all day. I never noticed that. I always thought she looked quite innocent, dressing quite modestly. Surely she wouldn't do that. What do you mean she wouldn't? Gold diggers these days are so good at pretending. I've seen her carrying a Chanel bag with my own eyes. Where would a university student get that kind of money? In an instant, almost everyone was discussing this matter. I clenched my fists. These two people really wanted to end me. How vicious. Jackson probably truly believed that everything I owned belonged to my friends. He might have thought I was just bragging last time when I said the house was mine to spite him. Confident that I couldn't produce any evidence to counter his claims. I thought for a moment, not immediately replying to the group chat. Instead, I first copied all the chat records from my computer and began editing them one by one. During our year together, Jackson had borrowed money from me 7 times, each time starting from £2,000. His excuses varied. Sometimes he claimed his family was struggling and couldn't provide living expenses. Other times, he said he had too many social engagements and had already spent all his allowance. I saved every chat record and attached the transfer records afterwards. Then I took screenshots of all the Valentine's Day transfers I made to him and compared them to what he gave me. The contrast between £1,314 and £13 and 14 pence was laughably stark. Finally, I detailed how he used my house and car to flirt with other girls, compiling all the evidence and posting it in the group chat at once. After I sent all this, the group fell silent for a brief moment, before countless messages began flooding in. Everyone was stunned. Numerous familiar and unfamiliar classmates chimed in. What's really going on here? Is she a gold digger or is he a freeloader? Turns out he's the one crying foul first. How can a man have the nerve to ask a woman for so much money and then call her a gold digger? I really don't understand. Who's the real gold digger here? Isn't this a classic case of mooching? Spending someone else's money while tarnishing their reputation. Impressive, I've learned something new. I look better than Jackson and have an 8-pack. Any rich ladies want to consider me? Jackson probably didn't expect me to respond so quickly. In an instant, almost everyone's tone changed. Megan jumped in to defend him, angrily saying, "You claim he used your house and car, where's your proof? Besides, where did you get a house and car from? And those bags, weren't they all given to you by others?" This comment indeed prompted a few drama seekers to chime in. Yeah, where did you get a house and car from? We've never seen you being particularly well off. Where did your Aston Martin come from? Wasn't it given to you by some rich guy you're dating? A freeloader and a gold digger, what a perfect match. Calmly, I called my mom and asked her to send me photos of the property deed and my car purchase contract. After blurring out the sensitive information, I posted them in the group. At the time, I said they were my friends to spare your ego. I didn't expect you'd actually believe it. Maybe these things seem expensive to you, considering one of you buys knockoffs and the other uses other people's cars to show off. You really are quite the pair. The property deed and contract couldn't be faked in such a short time. As soon as I posted the photos, everyone understood the truth. I could almost see Jackson and Megan's pale faces through the screen. They didn't say another word. I took a deep breath and put down my phone. Honestly, I really didn't understand why they kept trying to provoke me time and time again. I hadn't done anything wrong. Was my mistake in exposing a scumbag's true nature? A few days later, Jackson became infamous throughout the university. People didn't say it to his face, but behind his back, they all called him the freeloader. The student union immediately kicked him out, saying they couldn't keep someone with such poor morals. Instead of ruining my reputation as they had intended, they ended up becoming pariahs themselves. Even Jackson's roommates didn't want to associate with him anymore, all looking down on him. Megan's reputation suffered as well, and our relationship instantly became strained. I thought they would learn their lesson and not dare to provoke me again. But I didn't expect Megan to become increasingly angry, constantly picking fights with me over the next few days. A couple of days later, when I returned to my dorm room, I was hit by an overwhelmingly strong scent of roses. My Penhaligon's Rose Duchess perfume lay shattered on the floor, its beautiful glass bottle in pieces, and the pale pink liquid had almost completely evaporated, leaving only a faint stain. Before I could say anything, Yvonne rushed over, crouching down to pick up the broken fox-shaped bottle cap. Oh no! This was so expensive. The genuine article costs over £2,000 at the boutique. It's all gone. She looked up at me, seemingly more upset than I was about the loss. Megan sat to one side, casually filing her nails. She remarked offhandedly, "Eleanor's loaded, isn't she? £2,000 for perfume is nothing, probably doesn't even cover one of her meals out." This was true. When dining out properly, £2,000 might only cover the cost of one of my dishes. But that didn't mean I wasn't upset about it. I frowned. We had all been in class earlier, except for Megan, who had skipped. When we left, my perfume was still safely on the table. If someone had touched my things, it was most likely Megan. But I had no proof. I could only give her a sidelong glance as I took a broom to clean up the mess, swallowing my anger. Megan watched me hold my tongue, the corner of her mouth curling into a mocking smile. I figured she might be harboring some resentment towards me for shattering her dreams of marrying into wealth. It was a bit stupid, but not incomprehensible. I decided to treat it as an act of kindness towards someone less fortunate. But I hadn't anticipated that Megan would escalate her behavior. In the days that followed, I would return to find one of my possessions damaged every single day. Eye cream, facial oil, toner, if they weren't broken, they were emptied out. Eventually, I even found white granules in my face cream. I scooped out a bit and sniffed it. The smell seemed to be laundry powder. Megan had mixed laundry powder into my face cream. My head buzzed with anger, and I stood up abruptly, accidentally bumping the cabinet beside me. The door creaked open, revealing my bags inside, slashed to pieces. My eyes widened as I yanked out the bags. I don't actively pursue luxury goods, but my mom and some female relatives often give them to me as gifts. These Gucci and Chanel bags were from them. I rarely used them, so they were almost brand new. But the pristine surfaces from yesterday were now grotesquely mutilated. The delicate leather was curling up at the jagged edges, the cuts neat and deliberate. They seemed to have been soaked in water too, leaving a sticky, damp mess all over my cabinet. I was instantly furious. Megan had been destroying my things for days, but I had kept quiet to save face for her. I thought a girl from a less privileged background might be sensitive, so I let it slide. But I never expected my leniency would lead to such audacity. She had actually slashed my bags. I turned to Megan, who was furtively glancing at me, and struggled to control my anger as I said, "What is the meaning of this?" Megan scoffed, averting her gaze. "What do you mean? What's the meaning of this? It's got nothing to do with me. Besides, you're so rich, surely you don't care about a couple of bags?" I was livid. Pointing at the bags, I demanded, "If you didn't slash these bags, then who did? And the laundry powder in my face cream, did you not put that there? What have I ever done to provoke you?" Megan rolled her eyes. "Do you have any proof it was me? For all I know, you did it yourself. Besides, your family lives in a penthouse in Central Capital. Surely you won't miss a couple of bags? Just buy new ones." I nodded. "Fine. These bags are worth over £100,000 combined. The police can get involved for anything over £2,000. I'm calling them now. You say you didn't do it. Fine. Let the police investigate who did. When Megan heard me mention calling the police, she visibly panicked, though she tried to maintain her composure. Go ahead and call. It's not a big deal, is it? Why make such a fuss over this? I guess the richer you are, the stingier you become. I ignored her and dialed 999, explaining the situation and waiting for the police to come and collect evidence. Now Megan was truly alarmed. She sat up abruptly on her bed, anxiously saying, Eleanor, is this really necessary? £100,000 is hardly anything to you, is it? Do you really need to call the police? I raised an eyebrow. Why are you so worried? You said you didn't do it, didn't you? Eleanor couldn't sit still any longer. She got up and left the room. A moment later, the new substitute tutor arrived with her and knocked on our dormitory door. This new tutor had just arrived a couple of days ago, but she already had a bad reputation. Many students privately discussed how she was particularly snobbish. She adjusted her glasses, her bright red lips turning downwards in a frown. She said impatiently, Eleanor, I heard your bags were slashed. Did you call the police? I nodded. Yes, Mississippi. No one in the dormitory admitted to it, so I had no choice but to report it to the police to find out who did it. The tutor clicked her tongue. Is such a small matter really worth calling the police? There's no deep hatred between classmates, can't you just talk it out? I laughed coldly to myself. No wonder our tutor had already become famous for favoring the rich and despising the poor, despite only having transferred here recently. For students from wealthy and influential families, she couldn't be more caring if she tried. For students from average families, she was as ruthless as autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. She had just arrived a couple of days ago and probably hadn't looked at Megan's file yet. So she didn't know about Megan's family background. She had only seen what Megan posted on Twitter. Megan had once bragged that the headmaster was a friend of her father's. So the tutor probably thought she was really from a rich family. She had come here to curry favor and stand up for Megan. Seeing that I didn't respond, the tutor continued to try to persuade me. You're just ordinary students. How much could those few bags be worth? A few £100? Let me tell you, even if you report it to the police, they won't file a case. Before I could reply, the police had already arrived. As soon as she saw the police, the tutor immediately pursed her lips, abandoning me where I stood. She went to greet the two officers, saying, I'm sorry, officers. It's just our students being thoughtless. There's really nothing wrong. Please, you can go back. A female officer frowned. Making false reports is illegal. Do you actually have a problem or not? Let the person involved speak. I walked over calmly and said, Hello, officers. 3 of my bags that I kept in the dormitory were slashed. These 3 bags are worth £100,000. I believe the suspect has committed intentional damage to property, and I'd like you to investigate. The tutor forcefully slapped my hand and shouted, What kind of bag could be worth £100,000? Don't listen to her nonsense. There's absolutely nothing going on. It's normal for kids to have some squabbles. Officers, please go back. The police ignored her and looked at me instead. Do you have receipts for your bags? I nodded and handed over the receipts I had prepared earlier. I gestured towards the dormitory. This is where the incident occurred. At this moment, Megan was hiding behind the tutor, her face pale with fear, staring intently at the 2 officers. The tutor glared at me and said through gritted teeth, Why can't you be sensible? This is just between classmates. Is it necessary to make such a big fuss? Think of how badly this reflects on the school. I looked at her expressionlessly. What about my bags then? Who's going to compensate me? Are you going to pay for them? The tutor choked for a moment. How dare you speak to a teacher like that? I think you're just causing trouble on purpose. Upon hearing the value I mentioned, both officers' expressions turned serious, and they took out their notebooks to start taking statements. The tutor still tried to interfere and send the police away. The female officer looked at her sternly and said seriously, "If you continue to interfere with our statement taking, you'll be obstructing official duties, and we'll have to summon you to the police station according to the law." The tutor was startled and immediately shut her mouth, not daring to speak anymore. She just glared at me fiercely one more time, hating me for causing her trouble. To be honest, I didn't want things to go this far. Once there's a criminal record, a person's life is essentially over. So I deliberately glanced at Megan and asked the police, "May I ask how this kind of case would be sentenced?" The female officer thought for a moment. For intentional damage to property, once a case is filed, if the circumstances are minor, it's punishable by up to 3 years in prison plus a fine. In serious cases, it could be 3 to 7 years in prison. She probably knew that this kind of charge would be very serious for a university student. So she hinted indirectly, "Do you know who the suspect might be? This isn't a public prosecution offense, you can settle it privately." "Oh, is that so?" I didn't look at Megan, but muttered to myself, "I wonder if the suspect would be willing to settle with me privately. If they end up with a criminal record, they can forget about applying for postgraduate studies or civil service jobs. Most companies wouldn't hire them either. Their life could be ruined." I only wanted to teach Megan a lesson, not to be too harsh. I still hoped she would apologize and compensate voluntarily. At this moment, Megan's face had turned ashen, her body shaking like a leaf. However, she still refused to repent, glaring at me venomously as if trying to burn holes through me with her eyes. She shouted, "Eleanor, why the fuck do you have to be so vicious? It's not like you can't afford these 2 bags. You're sending someone to jail over 2 bags. Your heart is so black it's rotting. You'll get what's coming to you." As she spoke, she shoved me, making me stumble. "What are you doing?" Before I could speak, the policewoman looked sternly at Megan and said, "If you continue like this, it will be considered disorderly conduct. Mind your words and actions." Megan's face immediately flushed, and after glaring at me one last time, she didn't dare come closer. Seeing that she was still obstinate, I looked at her coldly and said, "Why are you getting so worked up? The police haven't even said you did it yet. Or are you feeling guilty?" Megan's face instantly paled, and she fell silent. The tutor chimed in from the side. "Megan has a point. You're all classmates. Is it necessary to ruin someone's life?" She gave me a contemptuous glance. "Besides, who knows if your bags are real or fake? You don't look like someone who could afford such bags. And you just carelessly left them in your locker. Who are you trying to fool?" Seeing someone speak up for her, Megan became even more emboldened. "That's right. I advise you to cancel the police report immediately. Just say you made a false report, or I'll sue you for defamation." Looking at their aggressive attitudes, I couldn't help but shake my head. They truly were choosing the path to hell when heaven's door was wide open. I was considering their interests, thinking they could just compensate me and be done with it. But they were pushing their luck. I looked at Megan one last time. "If you apologize on Twitter now and compensate me, I won't pursue this matter further. Otherwise, you'll face the consequences." I nodded and turned to the 2 police officers. "Officers, since no one is admitting to it, let's proceed with the formal process." The police efficiently collected the evidence, placing my bags and a found eyebrow razor with traces of detergent into sealed bags. They then addressed my roommates, "Let's go and take your statements." My other 2 roommates were truly innocent and didn't think much of it, following the police downstairs and into the car. Only Megan kept cursing at me, "Eleanor, you'll get what's coming to you. You think you're so great just because you were born into money? Watch out, you might have money but no life to spend it." I ignored her and got into the police car. Megan remained stubborn, insisting she wasn't responsible even after we arrived at the police station. Within a couple of days, the police had gathered all the evidence. The eyebrow razor matched the cuts on the bags perfectly, and it only had Megan's fingerprints on it. Megan was detained. It was only then that she truly began to feel afraid. At the police station, When Megan learned she could be sentenced to more than 3 years, she suddenly changed her arrogant demeanor and fell to her knees in front of me with a thud. Megan wailed, clinging to my legs. "Eleanor, I admit it. I was jealous of you. I was envious of your wealth and your good circumstances. I thought these 2 bags wouldn't mean much to you. Please forgive me this once." I looked at her tear-stained, contorted face and sneered. "What took you so long? Now you admit it after the case has been filed?" "It's too late." I lifted my leg slightly. "We were classmates once. I'll come visit you on holidays. Make sure you reform yourself well." Megan's face turned ashen. "Then my life is over. Please help me, Eleanor. I don't want to go in there." I leaned in close and whispered. "Then why didn't you think of that when you were slashing my bags? You didn't want to go in then?" I. Her voice grew smaller and smaller as she lowered her head. I grabbed her collar. "I really don't know what I did to offend you. Jackson Brown used my house and car to deceive you. And I helped you see his true colors. Instead of thanking me, you hate me. Is your brain waterlogged? You don't have money, I do, so I deserve to be abused by you? Do you think my money just fell from the sky?" Megan covered her mouth, unable to hold back her sobs any longer. I straightened up, shaking off her hands that were clinging to my legs. "If you've made a mistake, face the consequences. I can't save you now." Megan looked at the police officers nearby, then collapsed to the ground. Her eyes vacant and lifeless, with only tears continuing to flow. I glanced at her once more before turning and walking away. Don't blame me for being heartless. I had given her many chances. Kind words can't persuade a fool bent on destruction. She brought this upon herself, and now she must face the consequences. The tutor was also nearby. Seeing that she couldn't do anything about me, she gritted her teeth, cursed at me once, and left as well. I watched her retreating figure and called my father, asking him to deal with this tutor. Megan's father might be fake friends with the headmaster, but my father was a true friend. Dismissing a temporary worker was just a matter of saying the word. After that, Megan's sister came to see me several times. Megan's mother was a gambler, her father was paralyzed at home, and the whole family relied on her sister to support them. When I first changed dormitories, I met her sister. She was a very small, thin woman who was said to be working 3 jobs at the same time, which was extremely hard. Although she was only in her early 30s, she already looked like she was in her 40s or 50s. At first, Megan's sister probably thought it was just friction between classmates, nothing serious. But when she heard that Megan was going to be sentenced to several years in prison, her legs went weak and she slid down the wall. Her husband grabbed her and tried to pull her away. Megan's sister initially wanted to beg me, but her husband slapped her hard across the face. He raged. "I never say anything when you take care of your family. But this sister of yours is clearly dirt poor yet still tries to show off. We earn £7,000 a month, and she spends £3,000 on herself. Now she owes someone £100,000. £100,000. It would take us a year of not eating or drinking to save that much. Should we take our daughter out of school, or stop buying your dad's medicine? Why didn't she think before doing these things? Now she's in jail and you're still here begging others. What's the use? If you ask me, it's good. Let her go in and learn her lesson. Let her know the world isn't all about her sister spoiling her." Megan's sister was thunderstruck. She looked at Megan sorrowfully one last time before being dragged away by her husband. She seemed to have aged a dozen years in an instant. I felt some pity for this poor woman, but I knew that Megan wouldn't learn her lesson. People like her are tragic, vanity and laziness are ingrained in her bones, impossible to change for life. She wants to be at the top without enduring hardships. So she can only fall from her castles in the air and become a rat everyone wants to beat. Time flew by quickly. By the time we graduated from university, Megan was also about to be released from prison. I had almost forgotten about it until a classmate mentioned it. Jackson never changed his bad habits. He always borrowed money to show off. And when he finally couldn't patch things up anymore, he resorted to payday loans. He didn't even borrow that much, just £8,000 to buy a pair of limited edition trainers. Who would have thought it would snowball to hundreds of thousands of pounds in interest? When he finally couldn't pay it back and debt collectors were calling everywhere, he simply dropped out and went home. He didn't even finish university. While we were discussing Jackson, Yvonne suddenly spoke up. "Megan's getting out of prison soon, isn't she?" I was taken aback. Megan had been sentenced to 3 years and 7 months. Counting the time, she should indeed be coming out soon. However, with a criminal record, her life was essentially over. Most large companies wouldn't hire her. Further education was out of the question. And even her children's background checks would be affected. Because of momentary vanity and envy, these two people had ruined their lives. I felt somewhat melancholic. But then I realized that none of this had anything to do with me anymore. The past was like smoke. I had long since put it behind me. Thinking back on it now only seemed laughable. After breaking up with Jackson, I dated another boyfriend. He was also from a wealthy family, but he didn't have those bad habits of the rich. He was humble and elegant. I later felt that experiencing all this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It taught me to be wiser and to keep my eyes open to meet better people. Now I've finally found the right person. And I'm about to go home to get married and inherit the family business. My good days are just beginning.